RWBY Volume 6, Episode 7, The Grim Reaper. So this is a pretty cool episode. We get to see the flashback, or at least a short battle flashback for Maria and how she lost her silver eyes. A couple of questions admittedly came up from that. Mostly, how in the world did she get so insanely short? Because honestly, when I was watching it, I was like, well, this can't be her because this woman's tall. Like, I think she was even taller than the woman she was fighting, so she was, like, tall even for a woman. And I was like, so it's either not her, and then they're going through, I'm like, well, it kind of has to be her. And then it's like, well, is there some really weird thing that's about to happen where she gets like chopped in half but she survived? Because I'm like, why is she so short? But I guess all in all, they just threw it in there like, yeah, because technically when we get old, we do start to shrink. So I guess they just took that to like the ultimate extreme. Like she just halved, I guess. She got older. I thought that was super funny. I was like, that is so weird to me. That was how they ended up playing out, because I was like, that just makes it so weird that she was like just an average sized person and now she's like this really tiny old lady. But it was a great fight scene, very visceral. Her like getting her eyes cut, for some reason it's always those sorts of things I feel are more visceral than someone was killed in a battle. Like that's shocking, but visceral is very different. And especially considering she was screaming, like her eyes are cut and you see like the blood because she's not opening her eyes anymore, and like the blood is coming down and stuff. I was like, man, this is like really visceral. She's screaming and crawling and stuff, and the woman's coming at her. But great fight scene. And that was another thing. I was like, man, it sucks that they had such an epic design for a character we'll never see again. Like we'll never see the past version of her again. We might see another flashback somewhere down the line. But I was like, man, after this one fight scene, I was just like, they'll never do it. But man, if one day Rooster Teeth just got like $1 trillion, I would love for them to just make like a movie that's just about the Grim Reaper, and it could literally end with her going on that final mission. Like we don't have to see it since it was in the episode, but it could be something about that. It could start at it could start with her telling the girls the story or something. It's like, this is kind of how I grew up and going through that, which we might actually get in the series, because I was admittedly really shocked that we got so little from the flashback. I thought we were gonna get like a wealth of information, in all honesty, and it was really just like, yeah, I had silver eyes, and it was literally the story of how she lost her eyes. And we still didn't get any information on, like, did one of her parents have silver eyes, anything like that? Is it that insanely rare? Which I would assume, like anything, it's kind of a bloodline thing. So, of course, Ruby's mom most likely had the silver eyes, and that's how Ruby has them. One of Maria's parents probably had them, but I was really shocked. I was like, okay, they didn't really go into any of that extra detail. She was just hunted down for having silver eyes. And we never find out who this person is that, hired this random little gang. I assumed it was going to end up being revealed that it was Salem, but they kind of just don't bother with it. But insanely epic fight scene. And I was just like, wow, I wish we didn't have, this epic design of a character. Like the design was super cool. Her weapons were like some of the sweetest we've seen in the entire series, with they're basically two short swords, which I think are called like not commas, or what they're supposed to be called. But they were so cool. And then, of course, the fact that they were, like, magnetic, and, she throws one. Like, just at the very beginning, she stabs one into the Nevermore, and she's dropping down, but it's magnetic. It literally pulls the Nevermore down, and it pulls her up. So I was like, well, that's really crazy. But that's magic, because I'm like, that just doesn't make sense. Like, it would just pull her back up, but it pulled the Nevermore down, so it made it even cooler. And then she's going through the fight and stuff, and she'll, like, throw one and then kind of magnetize it and bring it back, so people have to dodge from behind. Crazy stuff like that. And then we see her connected, which was really interesting, because the whole time it was like, all right, so she's, hitting the buttons to activate the magnets. And then when she puts them as like one staff, it was kind of just like full on magic where they were just rotating around her. And I was like, well, how's she doing that part? But I didn't care. It was super sweet. And, she's going through the battle, and then it's like double sided, and she's, basically taking them down. And then, of course, unfortunately, because it was just, a wooden staff, once she, the woman's able to like spread her arms, she just bites through the middle, and then she headbutts her and knocks the mask off and just cuts her eyes. And I was like, well, that sucked. That was pretty dark, but it was an epic ending. She still killed her. Like she throws the comma, and then she hits the button, and it like flies back and stabs the woman in her back, and she falls forward, and then she just chops her head off after that. So I was like, well, that's a super hardcore way to take out the person that took your eyes, because that woman definitely was just like, woof, that was super close. Her ability was like, it reminded me of Jean. I was like, it's very interesting, like this super tough aura deal, but it it was clearly on like a time limit for her. But it was like, oh man, she thought she had it. It was like, I might be able to spare your life since you don't have your eyes anymore and all this, and she was just talking it up. And then it was just like, she saw, I was like, oh crap, and it just hit her in the back, and then she just took her head off, and I was like, well, that's super cool. It's a cool way to do it. And then we find out that that is why the legend of the Grim Reaper kind of just stopped. And then we also find out that Crow modeled his weapon after her, and that's why he has a scythe. Because I thought it was interesting. I was like, oh, that's interesting. They went with the scythe again. I was like, oh, that's very interesting. And then they actually say it, where it's like, I modeled my weapon after you. And so, of course, that's why RWBY has that. And it was really funny watching the opening, because I watched the episode twice so far. And in the opening, when they have the scene where it's, it goes from, like, Ruby's eyes to Maria's eyes, or vice versa, I think. It was like, okay, that's the obvious thing with the silver eyes. I honestly never paid any attention that Crow was there, but it makes sense in that scene that he would be there, because it's like the three of them. Like, RWBY, of course, is connected through the silver eyes, but Crow is also connected to Maria because he knew of her as the Grim Reaper legend. And so it makes sense that the three of them would all be in that scene, because for Crow, it was like, like I said, I literally never even noticed he was in that segment, but if I had, I would have been like, I don't really get why he's there. Maybe it's just because he's connected to RWBY and that's really it, but there's different kind of paths of lineage between those characters. Also, speaking of their lineage, man, it made me laugh both times, but when Crow said that he modeled himself after Maria, and she was like, well, I'm nothing but a disappointment, so you're certainly halfway there. I just burst out laughing like both times. I was just like, that's super rude. And you could see it in his face. I didn't even notice his face the first time because I was laughing so hard. But he just kind of like slumps. He was just like man, like that hurt. Like he physically looked like it hurt him. But I thought that was so funny. I was like, that was super messed up that she said that to him. It was like, man, I modeled myself after you. And she's just like, I'm nothing but a disappointment. So you're certainly halfway there. And I was like, wow, that was a super rude way to take that comment. But she just does not like crows. It was a super, super funny scene. So I love that for sure. That was funny. But great action opening. We do get to see a small segment before that, of course, with Cinder and Neo. Neo is fully, explained as to what's happened and this is what's going on. And of course, Cinder's like, well, I can't technically kill RWBY, but you don't have any orders because we kind of just thought you were dead anyway. So we can team up, we can get to RWBY, and then all will be said and done. So I thought that was super cool. Another thing, I almost skipped right over it, but we, of course, see Maria use her silver eyes on the Nevermore, and it turns it to stone, much like RWBY did with the dragon. And I mentioned before that that's probably how they'll kill, or well, not kill, but like, trap Salem, is that, excuse me, RWBY ended up using the silver eyes to turn them to stone. And I was reading a comment that somebody, I never got to respond to them, but they mentioned it like weeks ago, and they were telling me that it didn't make sense that would happen, but I think it makes perfect sense that would happen. Like, RWBY would, freeze her in place. She wouldn't technically be dead, is kind of the whole point. And they might have to kind of show that, like, who knows what will end up happening if the dragon ever, gets free, if there's even a way to, unleash that dragon or anything like that that's, still in the city. But that was interesting. Like, we see it again, and of course we saw it in the last episode where smaller Grimm are just completely obliterated, which makes sense. So pretty much everything from Beowulfs probably up to, like, I don't know, I would say the elephants, but we heard that they're like some of the strongest ones out there. So even though their size is smaller, they'd probably actually survive. But them going up to Ursa and stuff, they would be wiped out. But maybe a Deathstalker could possibly survive it, or would just get obliterated. But like obviously, as we saw at the Nevermore, or anything bigger than that would just be turned straight to stone, and then it would crumble if it hit the ground or something. But if it stayed there, it would just be there. So I feel like this kind of answers that question. I feel like they're definitely going to do that with Salem, or they'll at least attempt to. Like, if they freeze her in place, as long as they don't, like, shatter the stone, like, she won't be, like, brought back magically, because technically she won't be dead. She'll just be frozen. So I feel like that's kind of where they're headed with this, because we get to see it again. And after last week's episode, where it's like, all right, these are weaker ones, they weren't turned to stone. They were just wiped away. And then the Nevermore shows up again, which is obviously a bit smaller than the giant dragon, but it was still turned to stone because it was, it can somewhat absorb the power, but it, turn to stone. So I feel like that's where they're kind of showing us those little hints. So I feel like that's where they're headed with RWBY getting a grip on her power. Once again, I still think that's where they're headed. So, they'll try to free Salem in place. Who knows what'll happen with that? Maybe we'll see RWBY use it on Salem. Salem will try to reach out and grab her, and she'll just hit her and just blow her arm clean off or something. I feel like that'd actually be cool. But we'll see what ends up happening there. But definitely loved the action and the small story elements in the beginning. Then of course we get the rest of the team coming back. I mentioned in last week's episode, I was like, I hope we get to them, because with this being episode 7, we'd gone like 5 full episodes without actually seeing them. It had been over a month without seeing the rest of the team. So we get to see them kind of come back, and they're like, hey, we're at the village. And we find out that they've been staying with Jean's sister. So that was super cool. We get to meet her. Saffron, so she's a spice. Her wife was like a potted plant because it's like Takata or something like that. I can't remember. It made me think of Tarkatans from Mortal Kombat. That's like the species that Baraka is. Random fact there. But I like both their characters. I thought they were cool. I feel like something extra is going to happen there because they have the connection of Saffron's wife, where it's like, she's the one dealing with the relay stuff. And I'm like, I imagine that might be tough considering all communication was basically on like 4 points within the entire planet. And now that, it's kind of been taken down. So I imagine things are a little rough right now. And, her being blamed for it really is unfair. But I feel like we might get some extra content with them. We have to. I mean, it's Jean's sister as well as her wife. And I doubt they'll do anything with the baby outside of funny, cute stuff like they did in this episode. But I really enjoyed that. We get to see someone, from Jean's family. So I thought that was cool. And they show an actual picture. So he's got like quite a few siblings out there. But I thought that was cool. I was like, all right, they show that picture. And they mentioned, I think in the very first volume, that he had like a bunch of siblings and stuff. And I think he does actually mention, and I could be wrong, but I felt like when she was like, oh, you want it to be just like your big sister. I feel like he actually said that in the first volume, or maybe it was the second. But there was something I feel like he actually did specifically say. Like, my sister left and she was super cool. And like, that was kind of what motivated him to leave. I feel like that was actually in one of the volumes, but I could be wrong. But really enjoyed this episode. Unfortunately, it was, slightly short. It was an odd ending too. Like, they're talking and this stuff. They're in the house and everything. And it's funny with RWBY eating the sandwiches, like the 2 giant bites. After that, it's like, we'll go to the military base. And it's like, yeah, we kind of tried that. And then like, oh, it can't be that bad. And then they just close the gates. And that's literally the end of the episode. And I was like, well, that was kind of a somewhat odd way to end it, where it seemed like it was going into another like segment because they finally went to like another location. So I was like, okay, we'll get a little bit of dialogue here, and I hadn't checked the time, and then the gate closed, and I was like, this is gonna be the end of the episode, and then it went off, and I was like, I felt like that was a weird way to end it, and maybe that it was just me because like I said, it was the fact that they went to another location and then the gate closed, and I was like, well, I feel like that could have, I don't know. I mean, it was a definitive ending. But it just felt like a slightly weird way to do it. It's not like it bothered me, but I was like, I just felt like that was a tiny bit weird. But I am looking forward to the next episode. Everyone's back together. They're all in the village. We have Cinder and Neo doing who knows what the heck they're going to end up doing. Maybe we'll get more on the villains. We'll get to see them kind of, talking about whatever their plans and whatnot are going to end up being. But really enjoyed this episode. It was definitely cool. Love the action. I wish we would get more of Maria, younger Maria, and her being the Grim Reaper, which is super cool. As everyone mentioned, she, looks like Death from Darksiders 2 because she has like the 2 short sickles instead of like, 1 long scythe. So I was like, yeah, that definitely makes sense. She kind of looks like that. She has like the Day of the Dead sort of mask on and everything. So definitely an awesome character. I loved her character in the past. And like I said, I wish that I hope at some point we do get to see more of her. Maybe we will get to learn who, which of her parents kind of gave her the silver eyes and stuff like that, and when she eventually went out on her own as the Grim Reaper and stuff like that. So looking forward to more on her past, because I hope that this wasn't the one time we get an epic design like that, because I'm like, man, I honestly wish this was kind of used for a modern day character, because I thought the design looked super cool and her fighting style was insanely unique. So I hope we get more, from the past at least. But all in all, a really fun episode. Naturally, of course, I would love to know what you guys thought about it. So please put your comments down in the comment section below. Let me know your favorite parts about it, least favorite parts about it. And I definitely want to know if you guys think we will end up seeing more of Maria's past, and she'll give us, more answers as to, where Silverite people came from and things like that. Because the Silverite people is like a new part of history that didn't even exist during the first cycle of humanity, because none of that stuff was in the flashback episode. So none of the Silverite stuff was even there. And then it's like, oh, well, even Grimm knew to avoid Silver Eyes and stuff like that. So there's a lot there. So I'm hoping we get some more information. I feel like we kind of have to. There's still a lot of questions up in the air as far as Silver Eyes and where that comes from and, things like that. So I would love to know if you guys think we will end up getting that extra information, or if you think this was kind of just a one and done thing and that's pretty much it. I feel like it would just be a waste of an epic design and an epic character to only do that one flashback. Like, this is how I lost my eyes, and that's the last time we ever see the young version of her. I just feel like that won't happen. But I want to know your predictions, and like I said, definitely want to know what you guys thought about this episode in general. So please put your comments down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.